You want to jump in and say it? Sure. Yeah, let's start with that. Do you want this?
Can I just steal your mic?
Yeah, we can get them refocused now too, and we'll get started.
All right, just want to take a minute to answer one of the other questions that was online about essentially, do students by default automatically have their email address signed up for notifications? And the answer is yes. They do have the ability to turn that notification off, but by default, if they do nothing, they will automatically have their email addresses where those notifications will be sent.
Perfect. So if they add their cell phone or other methods, that's where you'll also want to have them turn that on for those methods of communication. Excellent. All right. We have an official answer. I love that, having the experts in the room. Okay, we're going to jump right back in, but it's short to lunch, so we can handle it, right? We're good for another 50 minutes, 55 minutes. We'll get us a nice hour lunch. I'm impressed by those of you sticking it out for a long time. More than an hour, tech training is intense for anyone. So some of people yesterday stayed all day till 4. I was really impressed by that. It's rare that happens. We're going to dive right back into graded content and grading inside of Canvas. All right. Can you hear me okay with that, or should I? Okay.
We can hear you.
Never an issue with hearing me. So we're going to start back in, and this time we're going to tackle, we're staying in a course. We're not leaving the course now. We're just in a course. And what are the different types of graded content you can have in a course? The first is a discussion. We're going to do very basic levels of these tools now, and then this afternoon in the advanced session we'll get really deep into them. But I'll point out the main features now. We're going to start with discussions. So a discussion in a course, I'll show you an example from an actual course where I have students in it, and I go to discussions. Typically in higher ed, this is the type of discussion we get. Here's an article, read it, reply in 2 paragraphs, answer these questions, then reply to your classmates. Really good use of a discussion. We want them debating, discussing, analyzing, applying things. Great use. 90% of higher ed discussions are this. So discussions are a lot like any other tool. When you're creating it, I'm going to click edit so you see what it looks like when I'm creating a discussion. Look what you have. The same tools we've seen everywhere. You have this rich content editor, and you have this content selector. So you can put all of your instructions there. Whether you already have it from Moodle, you copy and paste it, you have a PDF, you have whatever you want, your instructions go here. What's unique then would be all of the settings below, what you can do for a discussion. And I just want to reiterate, discussions out of the 3 tools, assignments, discussions, quizzes. These are the 3 activities you can do. You could have graded or practice versions of them. If you make those graded, a graded discussion, a graded assignment, a graded quiz, those go to the gradebook automatically. You can have them as practice, like you don't have to have a graded discussion, you could just have an open discussion too. What is the difference between those main tools? A discussion is the only tool where students can see what each other do or say. An assignment just gets submitted to the instructor, so the instructor only sees what the students are doing. Discussion versus assignment, discussion, students see each other's work. Assignment, just the instructor sees the submission. Quizzes is alternative to that. Quizzes is, I like to call, the tool that Canvas grades for me. It gives feedback, it's automatic, it stores data, tracks learning progress. Assessment is more what a quiz tool is for. So when we're talking about discussions, anything you want students to benefit from seeing each other's work with, put it in a discussion. You can make it graded or not graded, just like the other tools. They can all be graded or not graded. What are the settings specific to a discussion? Well, you have below those instructions, you have the ability to add a file here. Maybe you have a rubric, a protocol list. I always had discussion protocols. You must respond in complete sentences, no text language, things like that, because yes, they like to still speak in those weird nuances from our digital age. The other settings that are useful, allow threaded replies. This allows them to reply to each other's posts. That's the setting you choose. A really important setting below that, users must post before seeing replies. I loved when my grad professors didn't select that because I could read everyone else's and saw what they're talking about and then post my response. I want my students to have an original thought. I want them to see no one's response sometimes when they post. And then they can go back and see everyone else's responses. So it depends on what type of assignment you're doing, if you want to hide others' responses till they post or not. I'm going to kind of glaze over this one. Very few of you probably do podcasts or want podcast feeds, but there's the ability to turn this into a podcast feed. There's a guide on it if you're interested in that. You can turn this into graded. I'm going to show you what that does in a second. You can also, if they're replying to each other, you can allow them to like each other's responses. For example, I did a discussion where they were discussing project topic ideas. So I had them all post their ideas, and then they went in and liked and kind of voted, used liking as a voting system. Sometimes I don't want them liking. I don't want a popularity contest where they're just like liking certain people's posts all the time. So it's just, again, it's a way to vote. If you want to vote, you can sort your answers by likes and do some kind of class poll that way, or just not even use it. You can also add this to the student to-do list. That means it's going to go right in their to-do list right at the top if you want them to make sure they see to do this. If it's graded, it automatically goes there. But this is an ungraded discussion. I might still want them to pay attention to it. I can put that in the to-do list for the student as well. You also are able to make it a group discussion. We're going to talk about groups later. Just know discussions is one of those features that can be in groups. And then you can set a window of time they participate in this. Now, if you select graded, more options pop up. Obviously, you need to tell Canvas how to grade it. All right, if you choose graded, more things pop up. I can set how many points it's worth, what assignment group it's in. We're going to talk about all those things. I can assign a peer review to it. And then I get this box, the assign box. What I really, really, really like about Canvas is that every graded assignment, quiz, or discussion has this box, every single one. It defaults to assign everyone the same deadline, so I can just put a deadline here. It's due, maybe this discussion's due Monday. But what if I have lots of different sections in my class? I have groups of students who are working longer on it. I have a student who has accommodations. I have a student who had a medical emergency and has to have extra time for it. What do I do to give that extra time or different deadline? I just click this plus add button. Anything graded in Canvas you can do this with. There's always this box. Plus add is how you add exceptions or alternative deadlines. So let's say everyone's going to have this Monday deadline, but maybe this student is having a medical emergency, so I'm going to give her an extra week to do it. I can set that. Now, what if I realize I already have the date set, it's already due, students are already turning it in, I've saved the assignment, it's published, students are doing it, then I later find out I have an exception. You can still go back and edit and always add these exceptions. You're never stuck. All right, so just know, even if it's once it's turned in, you can still come here and add extensions for specific students if you need to. That way it just won't count as late in the grade book. You can add even a whole period or section. I use periods as sections, but maybe you have a Tuesday, Thursday section. Theirs isn't going to be due Monday. Theirs is going to be due Tuesday. You can differentiate deadlines for sections of students as well. That's how you do it, the plus add. Now you also have the ability, I'm going to clear out the sections. Once you start to add them, it defaults that first one to everyone else. That's kind of nice. It's no longer everyone. I'm going to go take it back to everyone though, because I want to talk about this availability window. You can set a deadline. All the deadline means in Canvas is that a student knows it's due then, that date and time. They also, anytime they turn in past that due date, the gradebook will show it as late. That means you can dock points if you need to. A lot of people don't fill out this availability window. They don't care when the student sees this, if they turn it in early or late. As long as they can dock points when it's late, they don't really care. Some people really want to control when students access this discussion assignment or quiz. That's where this availability window comes in. You can fill out one or both of these or none of these. If I fill out none of them, it's open. They can submit whenever. If I set a window, maybe I only want them discussing from Monday to Tuesday. I could even specify a time if I wanted. Otherwise, it defaults to 11:59 usually. So I can set just a window of time and lock them down to that. They physically cannot reply outside of that time frame. Or maybe I just want them to start Monday, but I don't care if they turn it in late. You could just set one of those parameters as well. So that's where this availability window comes in. It's an option. If you want to lock them into a window of time or official start time, end time, that's where you can specify that. And then that plus add is how you add the exceptions or alternative deadlines. That's just something really useful in assessments that you know. Anything that's graded, you have that option to customize that. So that's a discussion with the settings, but I want to talk a little bit about not the typical discussion. We're going to get into the grade book a little bit later. I'll show you what it looks like to grade this. But what are other uses of this tool? Remember, it's the only tool in Canvas students can see each other's work. What does that mean? Think of it in alternative ways. There were discussions I kept open all semester. In video production, for example, video editing tips and tricks was a discussion I kept open all semester. And anytime a student learned something really cool we didn't learn in class, they learned a new video editing technique, they learned a new tool, they could share it with the class. And I gave extra points to students who really tried to be collaborative and share extra resources with the class. So it's a great way to encourage collaboration in student teaching. I also had a discussion open all semester that was an FAQ. Anytime a student had a question that was relevant to everyone in the class, maybe a project question, things like that, they could ask it there, and I could answer it that one place versus having to answer 10 student emails on it. So I had like a running frequently asked question discussion going on. 2 other ways to use it. Another way to use it, showcase student work, make like a virtual gallery. This is more of a middle school example, but I've used it in higher ed. And when I did physics, the students they were doing element superheroes. And so I'm so tired of the posters. Even in higher ed, we did every workshop we did, every training, we all sat at round tables, made posters, posted them around the room. How many trainings have you been to like that? I don't know here if it's like that, but in Florida, every training we did was posters on the wall, and we circulated and looked at the posters. Instead, then people are always taking pictures so they don't forget what's on the posters. Have your PD trainings with this here. Have a discussion forum, and instead of just posting it around the wall, have them post it in the discussion forum. You have that follow-up. You can always then see what was posted. It's kind of a permanent record of all of the work that was produced. So here for this example, students had to make element superheroes. So I put my instructions in the discussion, and then they just posted pictures of all their posters. So now, instead of like having 8 million posters all over the place, or this was done for even experiments. They could take pictures of their experiments and things like that. It doesn't have to be a physical poster. I know in higher ed we don't do this all the time in our classes, but any work product, anything they create, if it's an art project, whatever they're doing in their classes, they could take photos of it or submit rough drafts of papers and share. I worked with a law school that used this for closing arguments. And they had the students, they had like a case, and they had every student respond recording their closing arguments for the case. And then the students went in and gave each other feedback on their closing arguments. Super cool higher ed use of a discussion besides just, here's an article, let's answer questions. Perfect use of it, use it in that way, but just think of all the possibilities here for a discussion. It's the tool students can see each other's responses. And when they click reply, look what they see. In a reply to a discussion, they have a full rich content editor too. That means they can audio, video record themselves. Instead of doing a text introduction to the class, they could do an audio video introduction to the class, make it a little bit more personalized. I had them, you can flip project presentations this way. When they were doing science fair in my class, it took up 2 weeks of time of them presenting science fair because they had to set everything up and take everything down and bring it back to their seat. It just took forever. So instead they could record themselves doing it. Students could still come here and watch and give feedback. It's just stored digitally, saving myself some class face-to-face time for other things. So think outside the box with this. Foreign language teachers could start a conversation prompt, and students could audio record the conversation and have a running foreign language conversation inside of a discussion forum. There's so many different applications. They can add pictures, videos, recordings, or just text even, but think of the alternative ways to really use this tool. Love this tool. People tend to always use it everywhere I go, even K-12 higher ed. It's always, here's an article, here's a video, reflect. Yes, perfect, but there's other ways too. Really leverage as much as you can with this tool. Let's look at some sample assignments. Assignments is also very similar. Let's go to assignments. So I'll show you an example of a finished assignment. This afternoon we'll go into the mechanics of really building an assignment. So here's an example of an assignment here. This is one I actually gave to students. When you give assignment instructions, this is an example of semester 2 when I had more time to make thorough instructions. When you're getting started, you could have instructions, do this worksheet, link, that's it. All right, so I'm showing you where you can go with it, but also know a lot of you are gonna have very simplified instructions for your assignments. Or maybe you already have a Word document of instructions, you can copy paste that right into here. You don't have to start from scratch. Never, my advice is never start from scratch. Save yourself time, get in what you already have first. But after I was in for a semester, my course was hideous my first semester. Students complaining because I didn't even know what I was doing. I was just throwing stuff in there. I learned, okay, now I have time, second semester, stuff's in there. Let me clean it up and make it better and more effective for students. This is one I created. When I click edit, you'll see what it looks like. You have a rich content editor for an assignment. You have the content selector, so you can put whatever you need to here. What I liked with assignments is I put my instructions at the top, whatever it is. This was for making stop motion animation videos. I made it more visual for my students. I put all of the instructions here. Here's all the steps they needed to follow. I even linked to documents they needed. They needed a storyboard document, so I linked to it. I made a checklist of their requirements. I even created a page with samples from last semester. So when I save this, I'll show you what it looks like. So students could click on all those examples and links here in my instructions because I have all those tools. I created a page of sample videos so they could go there and see all the sample videos from last semester as examples. I also linked them to a website where they could learn how to set it up. And then I embedded a PowerPoint background information here. Before I used Canvas, in my face-to-face classes, I'd have tables with folders with all the instructions, rubrics, checklists, everything they need. Ridiculous to manage. Now it's all in one place in the assignment instructions. They could be on their phones looking at instructions working on this project. They didn't even need paper. They didn't need 8 million resources. It's all in one place. So this is kind of where you can go with assignments and projects. You can make it a one-stop shop for all of your project requirements and examples and rubrics and everything. As soon as I added this assignment, I was able to then add a rubric to it. So that's what a rubric looks like. We're going to go this afternoon and how to build the mechanics of that. But you can see the rubrics in Canvas are completely customizable. You're not stuck with rigid columns if you don't want that. You can have every criteria have different ratings. And I like when you go to grade this, it's click, 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 and it scores it in the grade book for you. Worth your time building rubrics in here. And I'll show you that in the grade book too. But assignments can have rubrics. They also have settings that are relevant. So I'm going to point out some of the key settings here for an assignment. You set up all your point values. You set up the submission type. So submission type is what I want to spend time on. This is probably the most important setting. What are the different types of submissions? No submission. An example, read chapter 2 Friday. I want them to know by Friday on the calendar they have to read chapter 2. It's something they have to do, but they're not physically turning anything into me. That would be a no submission. Online is the most common. I'll get back to that because I'm going to talk about that one for a while. The third option, on paper, that's if you want a column in the grade book here and you want to grade in Canvas, but they're not producing it in Canvas. They're not turning it in Canvas. So that'll be like they're doing an oral presentation in class, or they're handing you something or building something in class. That creates a column in the grade book in Canvas, but you're grading it physically in class on paper or with a product that's done in person. The fourth option we'll go into in the advanced session, that's where all your third-party tools. You can make Turnitin assignments there. You can make Google Cloud assignments there where students get like a worksheet copied to their each individual drives. So there's different third parties that integrate. Turnitin and Google are some of those you can have really unique assignments for. The advanced session will cover that later today. So that's external tool, anything that's outside of Canvas that comes in like Turnitin or Google. The most comments online. Why? Online gives them the option to have a submit button. That's what gives the submit button in Canvas. So you can still accept paper copies and grade it if you choose online. Just you have to choose online if you want to give them the option of submitting online. That's key. Now when they do, you can select one or more option. If you select all four, you can give them choice. You can select as many as you want here. Let's talk about the differences. Text entry, what is that? It's that rich content editor text box like you saw in a discussion. Just a little text box with those tools. Great if you want them to pull in a picture or something like that. It's great for short responses. I always say paragraph or less, that's a good option. Why do I not want extended responses there? Anything more than a paragraph, like an essay, a paper, something like that, I always suggest doing a file upload. Because then you get annotation tools, and you can comment and highlight and mark up their papers. Love that. The text entry does not have that ability. It's just for short responses, like watch this video and answer or discuss this point. Or here's an article, give me a 1-paragraph summary. That would be more like what text entry is for. If you want them to actually get writing critiqued, you're going to give them some kind of evaluation and feedback, I would choose file upload because you get annotation tools. And we're going to look at all those things, see what they look like. Website URL is if your students are creating an online product. Some students create websites as products. Sometimes they have their own blog maybe for your class. They could be creating an online like picture. My students created infographics they had to make for physics, infographics demonstrating different concepts. They made them online. Any online product, you can have them just give you that URL. It's nice because before this, usually when you have a student give you a URL, you have to go to that URL outside of Canvas or outside of your system to go find and grade it. Well, if you have them submit this way, it pulls the URL right to the grading page. So you don't have to click outside of Canvas. It's right there. You can grade right while you look at it. Below that is my favorite media recordings that gives students the ability to audio or video record themselves. So instead of them doing a poster on Newton's laws of motion, I had them act out unique examples of Newton's laws of motion, and they recorded themselves on their phones. Media recording and file uploads both work on the phone. So you can have them audio or video record themselves doing tasks or saying things. That's the media recording. Also file uploads. That's the most common. If you choose file uploads, it also allows them to submit from their Google Drives. They can submit any file type, really. My students submitted video file types. You can even restrict file types. Maybe you're tired of them always sending you the wrong format. You could put in, like, you'll only accept this one format, and they would be able to submit that. File uploads, they can submit anything. Pictures, weird project files, any type of file can be submitted. But if you want it to be gradable, and with the annotation tools, there are any document types. So when you want to do annotations, that would be PDF, Doc, Google Doc, Microsoft Word, Excel spreadsheets, PowerPoints. Those are all the things that you can annotate on. So just recommend those to your students if you want to be able to note on them and give them feedback and critiques. So you can choose one of those options or more than one of those options if you want to. Below that, you have some other settings we'll go into later in the advanced session. You're able to do peer reviews, have group assignments, lots of cool things like that. And then at the bottom, you have that assign box. Again, because it's a graded activity, you decide the deadlines and who it assigns to. And remember, as soon as you put a deadline here, it goes straight to the calendar for those students. So if you had different deadlines, here in my case, Team Minions would have August 31st. Period 1 would have a totally different deadline. They're only going to see their deadline that they're assigned to. All right, that's an assignment. I'm going to show you a quiz briefly, then we're going to go to the grade book and see what these all look like in the grade book. So the third type of activity, discussions, assignments, now we have quizzes. Quizzes is the tool Canvas grades for you. So I think of it, again, more than just having an assessment. I think anything I can possibly put there, I'm going to put there because Canvas grades it for me. So I flipped worksheets into quizzes. I flipped lecture notes and things like that into quizzes sometimes. I had in my face-to-face sessions, my exit activities. Sometimes at the end of like a lecture, I would put in a few questions to see if they got the lecture, if they're paying attention, things like that. You can have really short quizzes. It could be 1 question. It could be 20 questions. You can use it for formal assessment, final exams, or just little practice quizzes. You have total flexibility what you use the quiz tool for. Just know it's a tool that you can assign automatic feedback to students in grading. The only types of questions you'd have to grade yourself is if you do like an essay question. If only the technology for that existed where they could grade essays for us. But if you have like an extended response or essay, Canvas will grade all the other questions. You just have to grade that 1 or 2 questions. So it still saves you a whole lot of time using the quiz tool if you're able to. What does that look like in here? Let's go look at a sample quiz. I know I have them somewhere. All right, so quizzes. Here's an example of a quiz. This is a quiz showing all question types. It's not an exciting one, but I'll at least show it to you. So when you assign a quiz, you get all these fun features we'll dive into in the advanced session, like statistics. You get a lot of analytics for quizzes, item analysis, things like that. You get to moderate, provide accommodations for students. You're able to go to the gear and get all this data and everything. But what does a quiz look like when you make it? I'm going to click edit of a quiz I've already made so you can see it. When you create a quiz, quizzes are different than any other tool. You still have the same design tools, but quizzes have 2 tabs instead of 1. Ignore my 3rd tab. It's a special feature I have. You have 2 tabs here. You have, instead of just all your instructions being on one page, you have a details tab for all your quiz instructions and settings. Then you have a tab for all your questions. All right, so that's the only difference with the quiz tool. You have 2 tabs instead of 1. And details is what it sounds like. Your instructions, look what you have. You can even record your instructions by audio if you wanted to. You have all those tools again. There's all your settings here. What type of quiz do you want? Practice quiz, graded quiz. Do you want a survey? You have all those different options. Do you want to shuffle answers, have a time limit? Do you want students to see the feedback, or do you want to hide the feedback? We'll go way deeper into this later today. Do you want any restrictions? There's the assign box we keep seeing. So the first tab's all the details, and then the second tab is all the questions, where all your questions will get added. To add a question, it's as simple as plus question. That's it. Pretty straightforward. You can also, the nice thing about quizzes, as soon as you create a question once, you never have to recreate it. It saves it for you. And you can reuse it as many times as you want. Assignments, whenever you build a rubric for an assignment, you only have to do it once. You can reuse it as many times as you want. That's important because you're never wasting time. You're never doing more than you absolutely have to. I was the teacher who had all my quizzes already done, all my rubrics already made before I got Canvas. And I was frustrated getting Canvas. I don't want to have to recreate my 20 rubrics for my project-based class. But I realized how fast it is to make it, and that I can reuse it and tweak it on any future assignment. Makes my life a whole lot easier. And it's really quick to grade using these functions. So it's worth building things in here because it does end up saving you time in the long run. So that's what it looks like from the teacher perspective. What's kind of cool with quizzes is you don't even have to go to student view. When I go to quizzes, there's a little preview at the top. I can preview right what it looks like as a student. So as soon as I go to a quiz I've assigned, I made it already, I assigned it, I can see what it looks like. And I just want to show you this quiz so you can see the different question types that are here. I'm now looking at it from a student view. I see the questions. I can see the time countdown on the right. Students can even hide the time countdown if it's distracting. You can see as you progress through the questions here, just like a student would see. And then you can always jump back to editing it as a teacher if you want to. But here's an example of all the different question types. We have multiple choice. I think we all are very familiar with multiple choice. That's the most common higher ed question type. We have the ability for true false. Here's what a fill in the blank question looks like in Canvas. It gives them a little blank box. Here is the fill in multiple blanks question. There's more than one blank in the question. Pretty straightforward. We have multiple answers. They can select more than one. So you might have more than one correct answer. We have multiple drop downs. That's what this question looks like. We have matching. It's a matching question. We have a numerical answer. And it allows you, the numerical answer is kind of like fill in the blank, but it allows you to set like a place value and things like that with it. You can set like standard deviation. There's all these different like math settings you can set with a numerical answer. With a formula question, this is a very simple formula question. I feel like most math teachers use this in a much more advanced way. It randomizes the variables for you. So if you do want to randomize variables on problems, formula question's what you want. It allows you to do that. This is what an essay question looks like. Students had the full rich content editor, so this is how they could also audio video record responses if you wanted them to. And then there's a file upload question if you want them to attach a product here. This is a question called text no question. It's really if you want to add any like excerpt, an article, a video to watch and then answer questions, you can have that there. It's that whatever medium you want to put there. Now there is another quiz tool coming. It's in beta right now. Some institutions have already started using it. This stuff's not going away. So using this is still worthwhile because all this stuff stays, all your questions stay. But there's a new tool, like a quiz LTI tool coming, that you have more question types, like hotspots and stimulus questions and Likert type questions. So you're gonna get more questions than this pretty soon. Just know that's coming. I wanna shout out to it. We're really excited about it. We're already starting the training, writing the training for it. But we've got to peak a little bit, but it's still in beta, so it's not perfect to where they're gonna release it to everyone yet. But it's coming, I've seen it, it's awesome. So that's like what's available in a quiz. This afternoon we'll go into the deeper mechanics of it. But just so you know, those are the 3 graded activities. How do you get those things into the grade book? Because now the rest of this time is just grade book, how to give feedback and grades. It's automatic. You never have to go to the grade book. I'm going to go to my grade book where I have grades and add columns. As soon as you make an assignment, quiz, or discussion in your class, columns created. All right? Wrong grade book. We'll go there later if you want to. We're getting too advanced already. So you never come to the grade book and create columns. It's done whenever you create an assignment, quiz, or discussion. The question I get a lot is, well, I just want a column in the grade book. I'm not making a Canvas assignment. How do I just get a grade in the grade book? There is a very minimal way to do it. The advanced way, you can have CSV spreadsheets, and if you're a super technical person, go learn that one. The other way is you can make an assignment and just fill out the basic required criteria. All you need is a title, a total point, and submission type. You could just put no submission. That's it, all you need to create it. So you can create very minimal assignments, no instructions or anything, and it'll give you that column in the grade book. So for those teachers who do just want a column in the grade book, that's the workaround. Make a very simplified assignment. You just need a title, a total points, and a submission type, and it lets you save it and put it in the grade book. All right, with that being said, why is my grade book taking forever? What? I'm going to try to go back into it. So what's here, when you get here, there it is. I don't know, I got stuck there. So all these columns were automatically created in my course whenever I built graded activities. I'm going to overview what's here, and then we're going to go in to see how you grade this stuff. We're going to look at all the different contexts of that. So when I'm here, I can sort my grade book in different ways. I'm able to view if I have different grading periods. You might not have that, but you'll definitely have different sections. You can filter your grade book by section if you want, if you have multiple sections in a class. You're able to export as a CSV file, so if you do want like a spreadsheet to work with your grades, you can have that as well. This gear at the top has options for arrangement. All right, so there's things like if you want to hide student names, arrange columns by points or by deadline, you can kind of play around with what you do to arrange your grade book. There's also, the last one's kind of useful, show notes column. It's just for you. You can have a notes column right by the student's name enabled, where I like to, if a student comes to office hours and maybe discusses a missing assignment with me, I'll note that they're working on it, or what we talked about for their grade, or any kind of note relating to grades, I'll put in the notes column. When I click show notes column, it just pops in the notes that I've typed for students, and then I can go back and hide it again. Yes?
We're just for you, but do students get to see those notes?
No, just for you.
Oh, so that column is just us.
Yes, it is a private way to note yourself, like if you know students are working on things or are out of had a medical emergency, they're getting to stuff. It's really just for you.
Okay, and I'm just going to jump ahead of you because I know you were about to do this. The notes on individual assignments, can students see those?
Yes, if you're commenting on assignments, I'll show you how that works.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect question. I like how you think. So when we're here, the other place, so that's the main gear. It's just arrangement of your whole grade book. Teachers see everything. If you want to see student by student individually, you can always switch to the individual view at the top. It'll let you go student to student. I still like to see big picture. It's just easier. I want to point out what these icons and things mean here. You can score manually just by clicking and typing. It's pretty straightforward to score something. You just start typing the score. That's pretty much it. If you type EX, that's how it excuses that from the student's grade calculation. So type the score, or EX is excused. You can see some excused. They're like cross-shaded. If you see an icon there instead of a number, that means there's a submission to grade. So I can just click right on it and go grade it if I want to. So icons mean there's a submission to grade. Red means it was turned in late. So I always know if it's red, I can dock points. Or when I click on the actual submission, I can also see this submission was turned in late. It's very clear when there's a late submission. Anything past a deadline is denoted late in red. I can see this is a unique assignment. See how there's options grayed out? That is an example of an assignment I only assigned to one section. The other students didn't have that assigned to them. That's the nice thing about that assign box. You don't have to assign to your whole class. You can just assign one version of an assignment to maybe 3 students if you want to. Students are only going to see what they've been assigned. You, though, as a teacher, see everything. That's why you see these grayed out blocks. The students that have this grayed out, like Aaron here, not going to know that was even an assignment. They have no idea. But you as a teacher can see all your assignments in this place. That's what the grayed out boxes mean. It means those students weren't assigned that particular assignment. So you can differentiate not only deadlines, but who gets what assignments if you want. There's a nice new feature for assignments and discussions. I'll show you this in a little bit, but you can duplicate them now. So you could maybe make, I know some of you have sections of undergrad and grad in a class. That's a great way to differentiate. Maybe they have the same project, but the graduate students have a few more requirements. Well, you can make the undergrad project, duplicate it, and just add to it for the graduates and assign the different projects to different students. So that's a use case of when that might have a grade book like this. You might have differentiated assignments for different groups of students. All right, so that's what's there. You can manually type it, or I love the fact that every single item here has a little drop down. Right underneath it on the right is a little drop down arrow, and this is some of the most useful stuff ever in it. First of all, the assignment details gives you a grade distribution graph. Pretty simple, not too exciting yet. Speed grader is how I get into grade the submissions in Canvas. I'm going to show you that. We're going to get to there. That's the wow. Message Students Who is one of my favorite features ever. Before Canvas, I used to have to go in, all right, Jane, Bill, Guy, Aaron, Taylor, all of them did not do this assignment. Let me go to my email. Let me type out an email to all these students. Don't forget to submit. Well, this nice little feature here, Message Students Who, haven't submitted yet. Don't forget to submit by Friday. Done. All those students just got that message. It's individual. It's not a group message, so they don't know who else got that message. Not only just haven't submitted, this is the one I use the most, haven't been graded. So sorry guys, I promise I'm working on your grades and you'll have it by next week. Kind of what I sent more frequently. Then you also even have scored less than and scored more than. So you can say, you scored less than a 50 on this quiz, I opened up another attempt, you have till Friday to take it. Or great job, you got a really high score on this project, I'm really impressed by your effort. That quick to send out those messages. So I love this feature. Love it. What else is there? Default grade is how you fill in any scores as a default. Like if you want to turn all missing to zeros, set the default grade as 0, it'll fill it all in. Default grade to 100, you could fill it all in at 100. It just fills in any empty scores or any scores you want to overwrite as a default grade. Curve grades, you can bell curve assignments. Just know once you do curve, you can't uncurve. It starts to do the formula and work that's magic. You can't really break it of that curve once you start it. So if you do want to curve, just be wary. I'm giving you the disclaimer. Once you do it, you can't go back. So you pick item by item, but yeah, curve grades, it walks you through the steps if you're interested. If students submitted a product, you can download a zip file of all those products. That's what Download Submissions does. And then my other favorite button, Mute Assignment, goes with me being a terrible grader also. Let's say you have an assignment that's taking you 3 weeks to grade. You don't want Johnny getting his feedback day 1 and Sally waiting 3 weeks. So here's the magic of mute assignment. Everything in Canvas is instantaneous unless you tell it not to be. Anytime you type a grade or you give a comment on a submission, students see it right away, unless you stop that from happening. That is mute assignment. If you click mute assignment, all feedback and grades are halted. None goes out. So I get in the practice, as soon as I start grading an assignment, I immediately click mute. I can still keep grading, students can keep submitting it, it just means no feedback or grades are going out yet, until I unmute it, and then I can release all grades and feedback at the same time. I used it also, not just for that case. Let's say you're letting students turn in early and you want to start grading early just to get grading done. I don't want students who turn in early to get their feedback before other students haven't even submitted yet, because there could be some cheating involved. So again, in that case, I'm going to still just mute assignment as soon as I want to mute it. That's a button I just got used to doing every time, because I want to make sure I always released all my feedback at the same time. There's cases where you might not care. It could be concurrent grading, but that's just a very useful feature if you want to release content or grades at the same time. That's the mute assignment. It doesn't stop them from anything else but that. You can tell an assignment's muted because of this bell symbol. That little bell shows that that assignment grade is muted until I unmute it. You can always just quickly see if it's muted or not. Those are all the options here, but we haven't seen how to grade it. So let's look at grading these items now. If they turn them in online, how am I going to grade it? Well, first of all, let's look at an article analysis. This was a discussion. I'm going to click that drop down and go to SpeedGrader. And once you're in the SpeedGrader window, this is for a discussion what it looks like. I'll point out at the top what SpeedGrader has in it. You have this icon at the top left, lets you get back to your gradebook. The next button is, again, mute assignment. So even once you go to grade, maybe I want to go in and grade my whole class right now, I can mute right when I get to this window if I want to. This is where I typically went. I go to grade in SpeedGrader and immediately mute and just work through my whole class as fast as I could. You have other icons here that help you give keyboard shortcuts, settings. Options allow you to grade anonymously. You can reorder how you grade, things like that in the settings up here. That tells you what assignment you're grading, what point value it's worth, how many or what the score average is, how many you've graded, what student number you're on. Moving from student to student's easy. You can just click this next arrow at the top right and navigate student to student. Or I can also, go back to the student that's submitted, have this drop down, and I can quickly see students who've been graded are a green check, students that need to be graded are an orange circle, students that are gray haven't submitted. Quick, easy access to that. So I can even filter by section or see all my students at once. Really completely customizable your view here. It's really fast though just to go from student to student and just click next and you can keep grading throughout your whole class. A discussion looks like this. We're going to look at all different examples of submissions that you see their original post and then also any replies they also did in one window. So you're not scrolling through a whole discussion to see all their responses. I used to, when I had a class blog, have to have a checklist with me. Every time they replied, I checked off on this checklist. It was ridiculous to grade. Now it's all tied together. You can also always click back to these links to get back to see the context of what they were talking about. So you can go back to the full discussion to see context if you need to. And on the right, you just type your score. You're also able to have a rubric with a discussion if you choose to. And you also have this comment box. I can add text comments here. I can add an attachment. Maybe I have protocols or an example of a discussion I want to attach. Look what I also have, that play record button. I can audio, video record my feedback on here. I even have speech to text. I can say what I want and Canvas will type it for me. Really great features. So you have the ability to comment, to attach, to record, to do speech to text, and to type. You would also have the rubric ability. I'm going to show you a rubric in a minute. That's what a discussion looks like. I'm going to go back to the gradebook and show you what a paper looks like. So if a student submits a report, going back to SpeedGrader, here's what a paper submission looks like. Excel spreadsheet would look very similar. Any kind of submission shows up here on the left. I've already started annotating it for the essence of time, but you can see because it's a document file, a PDF, Excel, PowerPoint, Word doc, Google Doc, any of those give you this toolbar to annotate. And look at all the tools you have. You can add point comments in different colors, and that gives you comments out to the side where you can even get into conversations about content with your students. They can reply and you can have a full-on conversation about their products. You can have highlighting, and you can even do color coding and use different colors of highlighting if you choose to. You can add text on the screen in all the different colors. You can strike out. You can draw. Here I drew an arrow. You can circle. You can even use your iPad to grade. You could be on your iPad in the teacher app and do all these functions with your finger or a stylus too. So it's not just having to be in this browser. You can do grading on the go. I loved going to Starbucks and grading because I was tired of sitting in my house all the time doing it. So you can take this on the go too. You're not just stuck on your computer doing it. You can even do whole area comments like that big red box and pull out a comment over to the side. So you get all those tools when students submit a file that's a document type. Pretty awesome. Then on the right-hand side, again, I can type the grade or I can view the rubric, and then I have the ability to add all those different comments and features. There's also, that's what it looks like when you record something for students. They'd have a play button. They would play and be able to listen to it. How this saved me time. This is the #1 feature that really sold me in Canvas because I've used a million systems before Canvas myself. I get frustrated just like everyone else moving from system to system. In K-12 it was 10 times worse. Every single year we had something different. And we never had a systemic LMS ever. So it's always been like pockets of all these different tools we always were using. So I was a very frustrated teacher when I started. And one of the things that used to frustrate me a lot about teaching is I was a science fair coordinator. I had, my students had, there weren't all my students, 150 students at my school typically did science fair every year. They all had to submit to me their research reports that were up to 20 pages long, and they weren't my students, so they used to have to email them to me. I'd have to save a copy, edit and comment, save a copy, email it back, and then conference with them one-on-one. About 20-minute conferences one-on-one with students. It took me 92 hours of my free time just 1 year, I calculated. Craziness. Not only that, in that 20-minute talk with them, are they going to remember everything I tell them in that 20 minutes? No. They're working on this project for months. They maybe remembered 5% of what I told them. So when I got Canvas, I created a course myself, enrolled them all as my students. They submit their papers here. I'm annotating right on the screen, so that's instant feedback. I could then do that play button, audio record my feedback. They now have a record all semester to go back and listen to the feedback. This really honestly made a huge difference for me as a teacher. If you're going to learn more about groups and you have anything collaborative in your class, one of my video class was a project-based class, so I turned it all into teams. Every time they submitted, I had one person submit. I could grade the team all at once in here. Seriously cut down my grading time. So there's a lot of benefits to using all these tools. I'll show you one more example here. This is what a PowerPoint looks like. Going back to SpeedGrader. So it looks the same as a document. You can have a PowerPoint here. You still get all those annotation tools. But what I really want to show you is this rubric, how great it is to grade with a rubric. If I do attach a rubric to an assignment, watch me grade with this rubric. Done. The score is updated. That's it. It's worth building rubrics in Canvas. I used to handwrite all my rubrics for my students, and I had 150 of them. Actually, I had 140 of actual students. But yeah, it was ridiculous. So if you want to, you say that's too fast. I would actually be giving better feedback than that. Well, you can. I can also, for each criteria, do an additional comment if I want to. So I really can get more granular with my grading. I'm not saying it's great practice to go fast grading everyone, but you have ability to speed up your grading process a lot. And it's giving better targeted feedback to your students. This really is the space that made a huge difference for my students. I saved myself time grading, but also the feedback was better. It was higher quality. They paid more attention. When they got alerts that they had stuff, they sure as heck were more interested in getting an alert on their phone than they were me handing back a paper that ended up in the trash. They loved having this. And if you do a lot of writing in your classes, this stores all feedback the whole semester. So they can see progress of writing. You can go back to earlier drafts and see, they can review that. You have the ability as a teacher to have like this permanent record of all their history in your class because it's saved digitally. There's a lot of benefits to using a tool like this, and that's really when you use assignments. All right, so one other thing I want to talk about in the context of grading, and it's for those of you who have grading categories. If any of you have a final grade calculation in your class based on weights and categories, such as you have discussions worth 10%, participation 10%, projects 30%, exams 40%, or any of you like that, you have grading categories. Okay, how do you set those up in Canvas? That's what we're ending with. In Canvas, those are called assignment groups. Remember that term, because if you forget everything I tell you, there's a guide exactly how to do it. The term in Canvas, assignment group. That's the key. So I'll show you how to do it. Just I know it's a process, so just remember assignment group. I'm going to go, because it's an assignment group, I'm going to click on assignments and click add group. All right, so remember assignment groups. Over on the left-hand side in my course is the assignments link. This houses all of my graded content for my course. I hide this from students. This is more an area for me. I hide this from students. I organize the categories this way. It's what I use this tab for. And when you're in assignments, right on the right-hand side is that plus group. I'll show you in a blank class where I have nothing. Here's my grayed out assignments because students don't see it. I have very little here. I have my default categories. Let me delete that one out. So by default, you'll have a category called assignments. That's the default one. But you just go to assignments and create plus group, and you name all the groups you want as those categories. So let's go here. I'm going to create some groups. I want a group for participation. You won't have the % yet. Don't worry about it. I'm going to show you how to do that. Turn it off really fast. So when you add groups, you're just going to plus group. Let's say I want to do one for exams. You don't have to keep assignments. If you already have that default category, you can just edit and rename it or delete it. I'm going to call that group projects. Maybe I'll have one for discussions. I'm going to make 4 groups. All right, so I set up my group names. I have all my names for my groups. I'll show you my class that's completed. I have discussions worth 10% of my total grade, weekly quizzes worth 15%, and you can just drag and drop the assignments where they go if you want to. If you already have stuff, you can always drag and drop and reorder them. I don't really have much here, so it doesn't really matter. Once I have my categories, if I just want to categorize my gradebook, I'm done. I can just make every assignment fit into one of these categories. But if you want to actually have percentage calculations, there's another step. So if I want to add weights to these different categories, I go up to the gear at the top. And it's the only option. Assignment groups, weight. That's it. It's the only option here. And I just click this weight final grade based on groups. And now it lets me set up the percentages of each category. And it'll translate to the gradebook. It auto-configures in the gradebook. All of that's done for you behind the scenes. So this is a one-time thing. If you copied this course next semester over, all these settings stay intact. You don't have to redo it. It's all like a one-time thing when you're starting in Canvas. You have to tell Canvas what you want, but then every time you copy and move things, all the settings stay intact. So it's nice to know that. So I could set up my weights. Let's say projects are 30%. Participation 20, exams 30, discussions 20, and it tells you the total at the bottom. Save. Now I have my weighted categories. Now you can get really fancy and even do like drop rules for categories and all of that. If you want to learn about that, I say look at a guide, because you don't want to drop things at the beginning of a semester anyways, because then all semester as students submit, it's going to keep dropping the lowest grade, and the student's grade is going to be ping-ponging all over the place. So, but just know you can drop things automatically. there's different parameters for those types of things. So you can definitely do that. So this is the last thing to think about. If you have any kind of weighted graded categories, it's called assignment groups. You go to assignments, add the groups, and then the weights to those groups. One-time thing. Once it's there, it's there. And that'll translate to the grade book for you. So we covered a whole lot of grading. Let's now, the rest of the time, we're going to answer questions. Yes?
So if you weight your groups, how do the students experience that? I mean, they know what amount of points things have, but then they get changed because there's a weighting.
Their grade book will show the weighted category grades as well. So they're going to know the difference between like the category percentage and their final grade calculation. It breaks it down for students as well. And on the syllabus page, I'll show you in my class, it also shows them the breakdown right there. They see the percentages right on their syllabus here. But in the grade book as well, it shows them the delineation of the different grades. They can even do something called what-if scores, and they can click and try to figure it out. So yeah, there's ways for them to figure out the scores. It breaks it down for them. Great question.
This wasn't about grades, I'm sorry, but I
No.
heard you say that like all the settings copy forward, and I was thinking back to where you set up announcements with a like future date.
Yes. So
Do those copy forward too?
announcements copy.
Ooh.
There's a magic button when you copy called adjust dates and times. You can bulk adjust all the dates and times of your course if you want, or you can manually do it. You can also strip all dates at once and go in and manually set it. You have some options with that too. But yes, announcements even copy over when you copy course content. Yeah.
So you're talking about teams and having teams submit. So once
Yes.
a person submits an assignment, can you assign the other team members to see the comments as well?
Yeah, they automatically by default will see all feedback and comments. You can differentiate too. You can like maybe you have a struggling student that didn't really participate. You can differentiate feedback to them, but when you're grading the original assignment that's submitted from that team member, the feedback goes to all students.
So when they submit those, are they set up as a team beforehand? They submit.
Yeah, we're gonna go over that process. Yeah, we're gonna go over that today, but yes, exactly. You set up the team first and make it a team assignment or discussion. Yep.
Can you show how the grade book deals with extra credit categories?
Sure, there's a lot of ways to add extra credit, a lot. I tend to advise not using extra credit categories. The easiest way to add extra credit, I'll show you when we do rubrics later today. My favorite way is just to add an extra category in a rubric, because then you can have your rubric worth more points than your actual assignment, and it will count as extra credit towards that assignment if you have that extra category in your rubric. I'll show you how to build it in a rubric. That's my number one suggested. There's several guides out here. When I send the follow-up, there's like 6 different ways to add extra credit in a course. I'll send out, there's a guide that talks about the differences in all the different ways, so you can kind of pick the method of extra credit you prefer. I'll put that guide in with the resources I'm following up with. They're gonna send out the slides. They're gonna send out screenshots of something I was showing yesterday, and I'll include that in it as well, a guide of all the different options, because there's more than just, you could have a grading category worth 0% and then have extra credit assignments in it. There's a lot of ways to add extra credit into Canvas. So I'll give that guide out too with the follow-up resources. Yeah, let's answer. Yeah.
I have a question about sending message about missing assignments.
Yes.
When the students get that message, do they just get the message or do they have a link to that specific assignment?
It mentions the assignment name in it. I don't remember if it links or not. It does mention which assignment it is, though. I think that should be a link. I would think it'd be a link, but I don't remember offhand. I haven't seen one as a student in a while, so yeah, I know it does say the name of the assignment at least.
The thing is that
It should link
students
it.
may have some like multiple questions, multiple assignments missing. And by
You'd
the
want
time
them to, yeah, if
So
you do it
if
through
they
the
have a
message
link-
students who, it does like tag the message that's there. I just
Right.
can't remember if it's an active link, but I think it is. I mean, pretty sure it would be, if they're sending it, they don't just usually have text. Everything in Canvas is linked always. So I'm 90% sure it's linked, but I'll try to test that out in a break if I have time to do that. If not, I'll follow up with that too.
Okay, thank you.
I just haven't tested that out in a really long time. All right, online questions.
Online questions, quite a few of them. So, pretty basic one, I think, is what's the difference between forum and announcements? When they turned it on the homepage, they wound up getting a news forum and announcements.
News forum?
Yep.
I don't know what they turned on. I mean, I know what it is, but I don't know why.
Okay, it says when they
Yeah.
added announcements to the homepage, 2 arrows to 2 links pop up, news forum and announcements. So they were just wondering what the difference between a news forum and an announcement is the way
They
I
might have
understood it.
enabled RSS feeds. Were you going to say something about that?
I was just going to say, if they imported from Moodle,
That might, yeah.
forum discussion.
Like, that's not in Canvas.
Yeah, so in the
Okay.
room, they were discussing, it sounds like if you happen to have imported this from Moodle, then that's probably an artifact of something. News forum is something that is available in Moodle.
And
it might have been
that
copied
relates
over.
to something in Canvas. You can have RSS news feeds as announcements. And so those can show up too in there. You might see like news articles. That would be what that is in Canvas, an RSS feed that's coming to your announcements area. But yeah, that's something that's not Canvas related. All right.
So another one around Kaltura, they're just wondering, is there a way in the assignments area to create like a folder so that they could essentially drop all of their assignments there? The trick is they want other students to be able to view it. So based on what you've said before, it sounds like a threaded discussion group would be a better way to do that, since students
Yep,
can see other
discussion,
students.
So they can all view each other's Kaltura content. I would definitely do that. Have a discussion where they can see everyone's Kaltura videos.
Got it.
Perfect.
So then, as you were creating the assignments, you had some support documentation for that. They're wondering if those, when you say added my files to that, does that automatically get added, or they need to have those? Do they need to have those already uploaded first so they can link to them?
Either way. Yeah, you can add files before in your file space and then link them in assignments or wherever you're linking them, or you can always add them right then and there on that right-hand side.
Thank you. And is there a way to link the assignment deadline to the calendar, or do we need to go in and do it separately?
Automatically links to the calendar.
Cool. This might be a slightly longer question. We might have to take this one online, but the question is, how does Canvas interact with VoiceThread, including both instructor and student voice threads?
Well then, it's a lot like working with Kaltura and YouTube. It's different for every third party though. There's a lot of documentation online about it. If you search the community voice thread, you can get snapshots of exactly how it works.
Great. So next up, we have someone who's teaching with a global audience. Specifically, they've had issues in the past with limitations of things in China as to what was available. So they're very curious about, let me see here, both bandwidth and stuff like that, but also are there any limited use or access outside the US when they're using Canvas?
It's more from the admin realm that there's a lot more restrictions with like privacy and what they like. There's some gradebook features that might not be accessible, but I don't know off the top of my head, country by country, what that is. There should be documentation also in the community about that though, because for our admin trainings, we do have documentation on that.
Got it. And I misspoke just a hair here. So they're very specifically curious about the media tools. So they've tried using YouTube and things like that in the past, which are not available in China. So they're wondering if they use the media
accessibility.
tools
Yeah, I don't
here.
have an answer to that, but there might be something in the community they could find about it for other instructors that were there.
Got it.
Yeah.
So can an instructor hide the timer in quizzes for students so they understand that
Yes.
students can do it?
Well, students can hide it, or you don't have to set a timed assessment.
Oh.
But if you set a timed assessment, it's always going to be an option to have a timer there or not for a student.
Got it. So if they don't want students to see it at all, then
really need
then
a non-timed
it should not be
assessment,
timed.
yeah.
Yep. Okay. Sounds good. So what tools can you add to the student to-do list? I'm not sure we've made it to that area yet.
Well, the to-do list, yeah, it's on the dashboard earlier, earlier this morning we talked about it. So the to-do list is automatic unless, let me find where your to-do list is here. This is automatic anytime something graded is created. You never add anything graded here. But if you have a practice quiz, like just an open discussion, there's that option to choose to add it to the to-do list now. It's one of the new features in Canvas. It was a recent update, which I love. So that way, if I say I have this new discussion, it's not required, but I want them to see that they should still do it, that can be forced to the to-do list.
Cool. So the next one was, how do we hide or show specific columns in the grade book, maybe assignments or quizzes, for example, when we're in the process of assigning/calculating grades?
Mute assignment.
Yep, so the mute assignment that was mentioned before.
Quizzes, so we're going to get more advanced in quizzes later, but quizzes has the ability, You can hold feedback, but they'd still see their grade if it's automatic when it's done. So you can even mute quizzes before students start taking them. If you really want no student to see any feedback at all from a quiz, even including just a numerical grade in the grade book, once you create the quiz, before students start taking it, go mute it. And then students will not even see their instant grade after taking the quiz. It holds that for them. That's the workaround.
Excellent. So the last one we have on the list here is, what does students see in the grade book? How do I make sure they aren't seeing each other's grades?
They don't see anything. They only see their own grades and items. They have no view of the whole grade book. Theirs is a list view of just their specific grades. No student information that's sensitive ever gets crossed to other students. They have no ability to see it. All right, I'm going to break us for lunch and I'll give us a nice solid hour. We'll start back promptly at 1:10 if you're returning, but if not, thanks for coming this morning. It's nice working with all of you. If you have any more questions, let me know.